Colossus is my favorite of the X-Men. So Colossus is the X-Men that I've had the most fun with so far. He is the one that I was able to take through on stream through the Mutant Genesis campaign. I played through 4 games with him. I played through actually like a lot of games with him. I've just really enjoyed his playstyle, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. It's also not the strongest, but that's also for later in the video. But let's talk about his alter ego and hero kit. So in alter ego, Peter Rasputin has 4 recovery, 14 hit points, and a 6 hand size. Love seeing that 14 hit points because that opens up so many new cards. A lot of the cards that we saw released in the SPDR pack that are kind of targeted towards those higher health heroes, Colossus can utilize. He has a 6 hand size in alter ego, which offsets his 4 hand size in hero. His ability on both his hero and his alter ego side activate on the flip. So when you flip into alter ego, you're able to take a Colossus card from your discard pile and shuffle it into your deck. And then when you flip to the hero side, you give Colossus a tough status card. The other kicker here is that he's allowed to have 2 tough status cards in hero form. So really cool kind of setup. He uses these tough status cards as a resource, and I am all for that. On his hero side, he doesn't have the best stat line. He has a 1-2-2 and only 4 hand size. But once he gets built out, that is pretty negligible because he gets a lot of boost to those stats. I have really enjoyed the design that a lot of the new heroes have been taking with, like, you see this with Shadowcat, you see it with Colossus, with SPDR, where they're very engine building and combo-y, and it is super satisfying to pull off. And Colossus is right there with the best of them. And one of the key parts of that kit is a card called Organic Steel. You get 2 of these in your deck, and then as a setup, you get to add one of these to your hand. It's a 2-cost upgrade that whenever you lose a tough status card, you can spend one of the 2 counters on Organic Steel to give yourself a tough status card. So you can just continually regain these tough status cards as you're losing them, either from damage being dealt or as a resource to trigger some of his card effects. These are the ones that I typically target to shuffle back into my deck when I flip down to alter ego, because they're so critical to making sure that the engine is well oiled. The other super key card in his kit is Iron Will. And it's almost so key that it's a detriment how good it is, if that makes any sense. Because if you don't have Iron Will, he does struggle a little bit. So Iron Will gives him +1 thwart, which is excellent. So it brings him up to a 2-2-2 stat line. And then whenever a tough status card is discarded off of Colossus, you get to draw a card. Now, that right there is game changing, because all of his cards are discarding tough status cards. Whenever he takes damage and discards a tough status card, he gets to replenish his hand, drawing up and mending that 4 hand size. And very quickly that can become 6 to 7 to 8, depending on what type of turn you are having or how many organic steals you have on the table. So incredibly fun once it gets going. The other side of that coin is Titanium Muscles. So Titanium Muscles is another upgrade. It gives Colossus a +1 attack, so he can get up to a 3 attack. And as a resource generator, you can exhaust Titanium Muscles to generate a physical resource for every single tough status card on Colossus, so up to 2, which is very significant. Huge economy. Once you get it built out, he can actually pay for really high cost cards similar to SPDR. Low hand size, economies on the table, can really kind of get going. There are a lot of cards that I really want to talk about with Colossus. I'm going to try and keep it not too long-winded, but as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about this hero, so apologize in advance if I talk a little bit more about him. The first one being Bulletproof Protector. So this is a 0-cost event that allows for a little bit of flexibility. It says discard a tough status card off of Colossus. That means that you can trigger Iron Will, drawing a card, Organic Steel, replenishing it, and then you can choose to either ready Colossus or add 2 tough status cards to Colossus. So I very rarely use this to ready Colossus just because it protected my Organic Steals. I was able to discard 1 tough status to add 2, and if I could time it correctly, that meant that I didn't have to trigger Organic Steals in the villain phase, and I could still be full up of tough status cards to be able to trigger Titanium Muscles to its full potential. So Bulletproof Protector is one of my favorite cards in Colossus's kit. It is so unassuming, and yet it's so powerful because it triggers Iron Will. It can refill. It can bump you up. If you have a 3 attack, or if you're running combat training and aggression, you have 4 attack. He can swing for significant amounts of damage. Love Bulletproof Protector. Steel Fist is one of his attack cards that I wanted to call attention to. Steel Fist says that you deal 5 damage to an enemy at a 2 event card cost. And if you discard a tough status card, you can stun and confuse that enemy. So right there, I love the flexibility of what this does. Is it's 2 for 5, which is pretty significant. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good ratio of damage. And then if you would want to, or if you like, you can discard a tough status card. So you can play it just for the benefit of the damage without discarding the tough status cards, just in case maybe the villain is already stunned and confused, or he's stalwart or something like that. You allow that flexibility, so it's not just a dead card in your deck. So I love the design there. That it's kind of like Phoenix, like what we were talking about, right? You get the power and then an additional benefit if you pay an additional cost. Also, triggers Iron Will. I'm going to just continue to say that. The last card that I wanted to talk about is Armor Up. Armor Up is one of the more unique cards in the game, and because Colossus wants to be flipping to Alter Ego pretty frequently to shuffle his cards back in, as well as get ready to flip back up to get the tough status card, he wants to flip down, but he doesn't have a huge threat mitigation in his kit. He has 1, 2 with Iron Will, thwart power, and then no cards that actually remove threat from his kit. So he is pretty hindered when it comes to threat mitigation on the table. So Armor Up kind of fixes that, because Armor Up is an alter ego action. It says when the villain activates, you can flip to hero form. So that means that if the villain is about to scheme, you flip to hero form and take it as an attack. You can soak it with your newly built tough status card that you just got from flipping up. If you do soak it, Iron Will triggers. You get to go into the hero phase with the 6 hand size. You've already played Armor Up. Iron Will triggers to draw back up to 6. And it prevents the scheme. And I love this card. I think the only downside to it is that you kind of want to be holding on to it. It's really tough to kind of assume that you're going to draw into it. And that's the problem, right? Because if you have a 4 hand size, you want to be utilizing those for resources or to play them, and having 25% of your hand dead because it's the Armor Up and you want to hang on to it, you're sitting there with 3 cards. That makes your previous turn a little tough. But if there's a way that you can guarantee, maybe you've counted, you know that you're going to draw into it in the alter ego, then it makes it a very safe time to roll down. Let's talk about some of his basic cards that he likes. So first and foremost, Def Focus is an absolute auto-include for me for Colossus. It pays for 7 out of his 15 cards. More of his cards are superpower. I think it's crazy. It's like something like 12, I think, are superpower, but a lot of them are 0 cost. So pays for like 7 out of his 15 cards, which right there will pay for itself, because these are the cards that you do want to be playing. Not only that, he has a lot of the other cards that he wants to put in his deck, which are gray, are superpower traded. So the cards that I was speaking about earlier with SPDR, Unshakable, and Limitless Stamina. Unshakable giving you steady, Limitless Stamina allowing you to ready. These are both superpower traded cards, so Def Focus adds to that economy and being able to pay those. And then I've said it before in a couple of these other videos, especially like Ghost Spider and Spider Ham, where the designers are creating heroes that are bringing old cards back into the mix. And Invulnerability is that for Colossus. This is a superpower card. It costs 3, and it just gives your hero a tough status card, which is very expensive. Honestly, it is super expensive. But with it being superpower traded, and you're also going to be running a lot of gray cards with Colossus, Power in All of Us, this, Titanium Muscles, you can get this onto the table with no cards from your hand. With his resource generators, Invulnerability gets really easy to pay for, and it also helps just maintain that tough economy. So really like that we're seeing some of these old cards brought to life. So let's rank his aspects. So in 4th place, we have Leadership. So kind of the same song and dance that we were talking about with Phoenix. Leadership has not been getting a lot of love for the mutants, and it's mainly because we only have one leadership ally at this point. So you're kind of locked into basic allies if you're going to be running cards that combo off the X-Men allies. What I have found works okay with Colossus is kind of not necessarily running X-Men, but running a lot of allies, cheap allies, Triskelion, strength in numbers to offset that 4 hand size, and it allows you to draw quickly into the cards that you do need. On the other side, you also have chump blocks, which helps you keep the tough status cards, allowing you to use those tough status cards for your cards in your hand rather than soaking damage. So there is a little bit of benefit here, but outside of strength and numbers, leadership doesn't really offer anything that the other aspects don't right now. So in third place, we have aggression. Colossus can be so aggressive so very quickly with the right cards. He has titanium muscles, combo that with combat training, get you to 4 attack. And then with limitless stamina, bulletproof protector, battle fury, you have a lot of ways to ready yourself and then be able to swing multiple times with 4 attack. If you have just 2 of those cards, you can swing for 12, which takes out a lot of some of the stage 1 villains, which is pretty significant. It also pairs really well with Team Strike to spread the damage out as you would like, being able to exhaust Colossus and any X-Men allies you have, so you can spread that damage out so you're not tied into doing huge amounts of damage on one. If you have multiple minions, you can spread that out, throw some on the villain. So Team Strike works really well with these high attack heroes. And then just Rush is typically a very good strategy with Colossus. The problem with the Rush strategy and aggression is if you don't have Iron Will, if you don't have titanium muscles, then it gets really hard to pay for things and it gets really hard to find things. So Iron Will helps you draw the cards into the cards that you need, but if you don't have that card, you're not going to necessarily draw into it super quickly. So with that, aggression can be very hit or miss, especially if you have a villain that comes out swinging pretty hard. This leads me into the second best aspect with Colossus, and that's protection. Protection works so very well with him because of the perfect defense strategy. So perfect defense, when I say that, I mean you're not taking damage after a defend of an enemy attack, triggering a lot of your upgrades, like Unflappable, Electrostatic Armor, Hard to Ignore. A lot of these cards that trigger off of defending and taking no damage works really well when you have tough. So the way that it works is if you are able to defend and take no damage, so say you're defending against an attack of 3 and you have 3 defense, that does not knock off a tough. The damage reduction happens before in the sequence, then knocking off the tough. But if you defend with 3 and he flips a 3 boost card, he's attacking with 6, knocks off that tough, you still get to trigger everything because you defended and took no damage. This also works really well with a lot of cheap defense cards like Defiance or even the 1-costers, and you can be guaranteed to not take any damage and you don't have to exhaust, being ready to go into your next turn. Also, being ready is not the biggest detriment for Colossus because he has the limitless staminas, the bulletproof protectors, the ways to get ready. Protection works really well even if you do need to be defending and exhausted going into your hero phase. Protection also offers the widest range of cards to give you tough status cards. So you have Perseverance, so whenever you flip form, you can give yourself a tough status card. So in Colossus, what that looks like is flipping up, triggering his response, and then playing Perseverance to load yourself up with 2 tough status cards right off the bat. And then Hard Knocks is another 3-cost event that allows you, if you defeat an enemy by dealing 4 damage to it, you get a tough status card. So these do work pretty well in maintaining that tough economy. However, that being said, I like Hard Knocks a little bit more than Perseverance because a lot of the times that I'm flipping down to Alter Ego, I still have 1 tough status card, knowing that I'm going to fill myself back up when I flip up to 2. And that brings us to the best and my favorite way to play Colossus, and that is Justice. Colossus loves flipping, and while he does have Confuse built into his kit with Steel Fist, you still probably will get a lot of scheming villains onto the table. So maybe they're stalwart, they're steady, or they pull in advance. Colossus has a hard time dealing with thwart, especially with his 1 thwart before you put Iron Will onto the table. So Justice really just covers that weakness very well and allows you to have a little bit of comfort flipping down, knowing that you can flip back up. You can add more Confuse based like with the Sonic Rifle or other cards that allow you to make sure that the villain is going to be confused when you flip down, if you are worried about that, or you can just add some 4 Justices in there that can take care when you flip back up. Justice works so very well with Colossus because it allows you to use the yellow cards to make sure that you're not going to lose while he gets built up, and then goes to town and just takes care of the villain. So this is similar to the community ranking right here. So I'm going to throw that right around here. And I'm also going to put up the community ranking for the power ranking where they thought that he landed. And I'm going to be right around a B tier and just right of SPDR. So the reason being is that he is so very good once he is set up, but if you do miss some of those key cards, it can be really tough to kind of crawl your way back out. There was a game which, I don't remember who I was playing against, but I lost Iron Will like 2 or 3 times just from like discarding it via like villain responses or villain activations, and I needed to keep flipping down, shuffling those back in. Now I was able to crawl my way back and get it onto the table. I pulled out a victory in that game, but I felt like that was more luck than skill at that point. If I don't have Iron Will, Colossus becomes almost unfunctionable. And that's I think that's a little bit harsh to say, but it is just such a key part of his kit that it gets so difficult when you do not have it. He can survive in standard long enough, but in expert, he starts slipping because he has a slow roll. But once he gets there, he's incredible and he's so much fun. But he does struggle a little bit, especially if he doesn't draw those perfect cards in that opening hand. Like I said, Colossus has been my favorite X-Men so far. He has been so flowy. I don't even know if that's the right word. It's the word that I'm going to use to describe him. It feels like, I'm going to play Bulletproof Protector, discard this, get 2 status cards, that triggers Iron Will. Ooh, now I have Made of Rage, so I can swing with an attack with +6 and overkill. Oh, and I discarded tough status, that triggers Iron Will again. And so it just feels so combo-y and so satisfying once all the pieces are there. And it's like so incredibly fun. This would be one of the heroes that I would give to somebody who really enjoys like engine builders. I would give them like SPDR or Colossus because it feels very satisfying once you do get rolling and you feel almost unstoppable, which is really fun. Thank you so much for hanging out. If you want to vote on who I play next, we are going to dive back into the archives of Marvel Champions heroes because we have a little bit of time before we get some new X-Men. So the way that I'm doing that is I have a link below where you can vote on who I live stream 4 games and do a talking head and review on next. So check that out, vote for your favorite, and we'll get those to the table here soon. If you want to see those, or if you like this content, if you could give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, it really does go so far in helping me promote this channel and the content and support what I do here. Let me know what your favorite deck build is with Colossus. Have you had any success against Zola or a villain with Retaliate? Because that feels like it could disrupt some things with Colossus. Let me know in the comments, and until next time, thanks for hanging out. I will see you around. Peace.